So what we found, the US beef industry is losing approximately 3.7 billion annually. And most importantly, one thing that really struck us was close to 400 million pound of meat is wasted. Beef is wasted.
Hello, me folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. My name is Ranjith Ramanathan, and we have someone back on the podcast that we've been talking, and we had a very good conversation with Dr. Knight recently on meat color. We wanted to have him back, and I'm glad that he accepted to be back on MeatsPad. Some last year in RMC, we wanted to do it like in RMC this year in Oklahoma City, but like, why wait? Let's talk about this research, some of the recent findings on meat waste, fresh meat color. Welcome back, Dr. Ramanathan from Oklahoma State University. How you doing?
Good. Thank you, Francisco, for the invitation. It's great to be here. I'm a big fan of your MeatsPad. I'm glad it's growing. And also a big hi to all the viewers. I hope all are doing great.
Thank you so much. I'm very fan of your work, and as you know, meat color is one of my passions. And let's jump in and talk about this topic that we were discussing before recording. That there's not a lot of data, or let's say recent data on meat that is wasted at the retail level. And I think I would like to talk about this research that you have conducted recently, some of the new findings, the importance of this research as to what can be found or what is wasted at the retail level.
Sure. Yeah, that's a very relevant topic. If Before answering, one step back, like if you think, what is the significance of food wastage? For example, uh, the population in different countries are growing. So the question is how we're going to feed the world, especially when you think about the purchasing habit. The animal proteins are growing up. So if you compare, because everyone need a protein source, and the animal protein source, especially the demand is growing up. At the same time, we can produce a lot of product. On the other side, food wastage is a big issue. I don't know if you know the statistics from most of the agencies from United Nations. Approximately one third of the food we produce is getting wasted. So that's a huge thing. So that's one of the focus of our research. We want to know how much animal protein or meat is wasted. So that's relevant because if you look at like what is significant, because it take a lot of energy, water, feed to produce all this type of meat. If you're producing well at the same time, if you're not preserving well, it might be a big issue. So that's a significance. So what we did was my area of research is on meat quality. So if you produce meat, we need to get to the consumers, especially in US, Canada, and Europe, and maybe in Australia too. The consumers prefer chilled meat. So when you go to the grocery store, they would like to see a bright red color, especially in beef. If you don't see a bright red color, people think it's bad. The color has nothing to do with the safety aspect because you may see a bright red color steak that has some pathogenic bacteria, but that's a consumer perception. So if you see a even small browning, people don't buy it. So what we did was we want to know how much meat is wasted in US. So what we contacted several retailers. So we did a survey to understand how, because there was some data that back in 2000, since 2000, industry has evolved a lot of changes happened, but there is not much really good statistics. What is the impact of this browning? So what we did a survey of the major retailers. We found out how much meat is wasted just to discoloration. And finally, we use those statistics to model based on the annual production. So that was a study we did, and we published in Meat and Muscle Biology.
Yeah, and actually looking at the paper, that was published in 2022. I was looking at I know due to non-disclosure, you cannot mention what stores you collected this data from, but to understand a little bit of about I mean, were they like big chains, medium-sized retail businesses? I think I would like to know more about because we have some formats right
Yeah,
now
yeah.
that yes.
Sure. So what we did was, again, some of them are major retailers. Because of the non-disclosure, we cannot tell the name, but these represent more than 40 different states. Uh, we got representative data for close to 15%, 15 to 20%. When you do a survey, these are highly good numbers. So based on this number, we calculated how much is the total annual production of beef in US. In that one, there is a ground beef. Ground beef contributes to 40%, and the whole cut, like steaks, contribute the remaining. So what we did was we reached out to each retailer, major and minor, small retailers, and asked like how much meat you guys are throwing out. And also we asked the question how much in the let's say if we have a steak, if it is discolored, the first step is they try to discount. Even the discount is not working out, they're gonna, unfortunate part is they put in the trash. So that's the one thing we did. And also we quantify, because nowadays you can see a lot of emphasis on the environment, like what is the impact of greenhouse gas. So we can quantify, if we are saving 1%, what will be the impact on the environment. So one of our finding, again, this may have a huge number, but if you compare with the other produce, like say, let's say vegetables or cereals, I was looking at some of the FAO data. They have a high percentage, but what we found was in US, around 2.5% of the meat we produced is wasted. But even though it's a 2.5%, if you convert the value and the amount, that's a huge number. So what we found, the US beef industry is losing approximately 3.7 billion annually. And most importantly, one thing that really struck us was close to 400 million pound of meat is wasted. Beef is wasted, 400 million pounds of beef. So that's a huge number. But uh, if you check the fresh produce, you will see a huge number too. Don't get me wrong, but our focus was how we can still serve some of these discoloration. And if you translate back to, so let's say 400 million pound, how much animal is corresponding? So let's say if an animal has like say 1,000 or 1,200 pound animal weight, so if you do the math, it's close to 780,000 animals. So that's a huge number. We are wasting this much meat. That's consumable one. Of course, people think it's brown in color. That means it's not wholesome. It is not good to eat. So it's a meat color change is primarily due to oxidation. For example, if you cut an apple, it turns brown. That's the same chemical reaction happening, and a lot of people think it's something with the food safety aspect or eating quality aspect. So that's a unfortunate part.
And we talk about that, like the food safety versus color, and I think Dr. Nair mentioned that he's working on something about that on the podcast. I'm not sure if he mentioned, but he's
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
working to understand more what's beyond that relationship between protein oxidation, myoglobin oxidation, and bacterial growth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So how many animals did you say? Like, I mean, do the calculation.
Yeah, 780,000.
Wow.
So that's a huge number. So what we did was we quantified, okay, how much feed is required, how much energy is required, how much water is required to raise these animals. So if we can reduce even 1% discoloration, that has a huge impact on the environment and also economy. But again, don't get me wrong. If you look at the because unfortunate part is there is not much data like this. Most because it's really hard to get this data. So if you look at like 2000 or a little bit earlier, so they were telling close to 15% of the meat is wasted due to discoloration. So when you compare maybe 25 years back or 35 years back, we made really good progress in decreasing that percentage. For example, it decreased from probably 15% to 2.5. From my personal opinion, that's a great improvement. Of course, there is always room for improvement. And food wastage in general, it's really hard to control. There are a lot of things we can control, a lot of things we cannot control, but still, I feel like we can still reduce that percentage. And also, it's not a one way of approach, maybe multiple, like maybe educating consumers, maybe developing some technology or understanding why meat discolor also help.
This is well, I was gonna say this is awesome data, but it's not good, right? Like we
Yeah.
we want to prevent that. Looking at the numbers from Smith and all in 2000, I think they reported 1 billion
Mm-hmm.
dollars like for total loss
Yeah.
annually due to
Sure.
discoloration and meat. And but I think this is almost, well, three
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. I would say a couple of important things we need to think about. One, production increased, so we are calculating based on annual production. Second one, definitely inflation also plays a role. So that's why it's really hard to compare $1 million versus 3.7 billion in 2022. That's also plays a role. But still, I would say that's if you want, again, sustainability, that's a term you may hear around the industry. So if you want to make it more sustainable without affecting the environment or the economy, definitely there's a plenty of room where we can decrease the discoloration. And also we can do both at the plant level and also the retail level. Uh, so maybe you probably have to develop some new technologies to limit these color changes.
Yeah. On this and I guess it's on the manuscript, but you talk about PVC
Mhm.
film or the aerobic packaging. Do you see any difference? Because I know some stores in the Midwest or some stores they're starting to move towards vacuum packaging
Yeah,
and MAP.
sure,
And that
sure.
was the so how does that have or how does that play with the PVC? I mean, based on the data that you collected.
Sure, sure. So most of the data we collected, it's primarily from PVC overlap because that's the most commonly used. And the reason why most of the retailers use PVC because it will have that bright red color. Uh, Especially if you look at Europe, they mostly used vacuum package because they did a great job in educating the consumers. The color has less impact on the quality or the food safety aspect. So if we can incorporate vacuum packaging in our retail case, that has a huge potential to reduce the wastage because when you package in PVC or wrap, that's an aerobic film or that has more oxygen in the film, so that will promote discoloration or meat will turn brown. But when you remove that oxygen part, meat won't have that bright red color. It will be dark red color, but it'll stay fresh for a very, very longer time. So that way, that's a great way to limit discoloration. And also some companies use matte packaging. Basically, those are rigid tray packaging. For example, if you buy ground turkey or ground chicken, so they are almost packaged in those rigid tray. So there is a huge potential. So what we are doing currently in our lab, because there is not much tools for the processes. For example, if you are killing these animals and we have carcass, so there is no way we can segregate animals based on the color stability. For example, once the animal is harvested, they do the fab, they'll keep it in the cooler for 22 to 72 hours, depending upon the processing. And if we can develop some technology from a processing side, that'll have a huge impact. So we got a couple of USDA grant, United States Department of Agriculture grant, working on it to develop some new tools to limit or predict discoloration. I think that's the one area we are working on. Other one, if we can develop some tools for the retailers, maybe a mobile app-based tools to predict discoloration, that will be really good to understand. Or if we have a lot of stakes on the retail case, if something is going to go brown very faster, maybe they can sell it early, so that way we can limit wastage. So those are the two different area of research we are currently doing in our lab. Of course, understanding why meat discolor, uh, it will help to learn more or develop some packaging technologies.
And this is what they call shrink, right? Because at the retail level, when you talk about meat waste, they talk about shrink, and sometimes, depending on the store, they go from 2 to 3%. I mean, that's a lot, but they're accounting to that 2-3% on their numbers. So
Yeah.
and that's, I guess that's what some of the other questions that I have, because I'm looking on the table. You have retailer A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Definitely retailer B has, I mean, has a lot more sales. You're looking at, in terms of kilograms, right? 140,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, just a little bit of that, but
Mm.
it's surprising how much. I mean, you compare ground beef and steak, especially the first retailer, 27% sales discounted, and I think that popped up. Do you know? I mean, maybe you can tell us more about this.
So yeah,
What's up with the, yeah?
so it's a when we talk with all these retailers, it's a very interesting strategy they use for discounting, and different companies use discount differently. So for small processors, they have more flexibility because they will have a meat lab manager. So they try to discount early depending upon extension of the. So if it is a small browning, and also the time of the day, weekend, weekday, so that also plays a role. So they try to sell as much they possible. And also, if it is a small processor, that's advantage is they they can use it for other products. For example, if they have a meat processing facility, like they make sausage or any cooked meat, so they can use it. But for a big processor or a big uh, super chain, they don't have a meat lab. So the further processing is always a challenge. So maybe we need to think about the way how we can, because another thing, like food safety laws, that's another big issue. The use of this type of meat might be a challenge. So depending upon the retailer, their strategies are different. Of course, ground beef discolor very faster because there is a grinding involved. Shelf life is very, very less. Like if you get 3 days, 2.5 days, that's great. That's one of the reasons like map packaging might be again, it's a trade-off. Like if you use a map packaging, then the cost might be an issue. Like then packaging tray, it looks different than normal. So the consumer, end of the day, the consumer make the call like what type of packaging they prefer. So it's a little bit more complex than we think. But my personal opinion, like industry, they are doing everything to minimize this wastage. So even though you see a huge number from a pound perspective, animal, but if you compare with other produce, I would say still it's small. Of course, meat, it takes more time, more resources to make. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a multifactorial
Yeah.
approach, and definitely I've seen that the meat industry it's is fighting this, right? We
Yeah.
all want to help sustainability. We'll want to help to decrease this number to the minimum, but also I understand that there's some challenges, and I think the first one is consumer, right? Because the first one, or the first, in my opinion, we sell in the PVC film, this with the styrofoam, because the consumer is used to seeing
Mhm.
this very cherry red color,
Sure.
and Well, and that can be a transition for map, but on the other hand, you have the vacuum packaging and may not be as appealing this natural color, the purple color of myoglobin when it's, I guess it will be very interesting to look at what's the perspective,
Mm-hmm.
the consumer level, right? To see,
True.
okay, am I willing to purchase a
Mm-hmm.
purple
Yeah.
piece of meat in vacuum package, and the education that goes along that,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Because sometimes they think that there's something wrong because it's purple in the vacuum
Mm-hmm.
package, and so I think there's an education component that we have to have.
And also in the same line, I know we are talking about the impact of meat wastage, but other huge thing coming up, or you may see in the industry soon, the use of biodegradable packaging. So the plastic waste. So we are doing some work, developing some packaging film. So for example, most of the industry use plastic film, especially in European Union or in UK. They already banned the use of single-use plastic. So the because the plastic has a lot of advantages, but the question is how we can reduce the use of packaging. So we have a paper, we just published a paper where we use polylactic acid, and that's a research. We collaborate with the Michigan State University School of Packaging. So when we think future, we need to have some biodegradable film. Again, that's not the focus of today's talk, but biodegradable film that has less impact on the environment at the same time can we give a bright red color. So that's another area we are working on. It will have a huge impact because even when we make this biodegradable film, it should have that same quality as the plastic film, at the same time having the consumer appeal and all of the quality attributes.
I like this illustration that you put on the paper. I mean, looking at the discoloration slash meat waste, and based on the numbers, maybe if you can talk about this. I know we talk about the amount of animals that you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, 780,000
Yeah,
animals associated with the natural
sure.
resources that you were talking about, right?
Yeah,
And this is well, assuming the boneless beef.
yeah, boneless beef. Yeah, yeah. So what we did was, so when we did the survey, we found this much beef is wasted. So we want to know how much it translates to how many animals and also the natural resources used. So we calculate like the average weight of a cattle, and that's a boneless beef. So when you harvest an animal, like in beef, is close to 63% is a dressing
Yeah.
percentage. So based on that one, we calculated. So that leads to close to 780 animals, and that's a lot, especially if you consider the amount of feed we are giving, water, energy, and also the uh, chilling cost. That's a huge. That's electricity cost. So if you consider everything, that has a impact on the entire. So what we did was we just don't want to look at one angle, but we want to look at on a holistic. So that's why we have some collaborators from agricultural economics and also natural resources economics. So that's how we were able to do the maths. How much is the impact on the environment and also the economy?
This is only on beef, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so it could be potentially be done on
In chicken,
pork
yeah,
or
pork, yeah,
poultry, right?
poultry, pork, yeah,
And I cannot imagine how the number will grow, right? Based on and a lot of the times, I mean, pork, well, fresh pork, yeah, you do have some retail business or some retail stores that they will they will
mm-hmm,
put out on display some pork loin, right? Pork
mm-hmm,
loin, chops, pork
yeah,
chops. But I see that many of them also sell in vacuum package, right? Whole
yeah,
muscle, the belly,
sure,
or the ribs. So I think that will, in my opinion, wouldn't be as high
yeah.
as I
So
guess for fresh pork.
that's a great question. Like even in pork and chicken, the consumers are looking for color. So they look for the light pink color. So we have some, we haven't published it. We have some unofficial way we quantified it. Especially chicken, we got some global numbers. I don't want to share in this podcast because you're gonna quote me, but that's a huge number. I never thought about it, and that's almost, we got a global number, not the US base, but still meat is wasted. That's an interesting aspect. And in pork too, what I heard from some of the commodity groups, they are also looking for that light pink color. Somehow, even not the bright red color, but still that light pink color, especially in ground turkey and ground chicken. That's one of the reasons they use the tray packaging. But still, they look for that light pink color. Consumers think that light color is a determinant of the quality. So that's a great point. We don't have the numbers in official numbers in front, but when you add up all these numbers, that might be significant. That might be significant.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because you add that, and then I mean, there's the other component, processed meats, right? And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that's that was my last question. I know we got a little bit over time, but expiration date. I know
Mm-hmm.
some stores have the freeze buy,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I guess we can potentially talk about this as a last question, because
Mm-hmm.
what are the regulations that or what are some, I know back in 4 or 5 years that when I was doing this, but I don't think we have done a lot of progress on
Mm-hmm.
like what's the gray area, right? I mean,
Sure.
freeze
Sure.
buy
Yeah.
if like on a map packaging that you know that
Mm-hmm.
it's the fresh is there still,
Mm-hmm.
but today is the expiration date, or like,
Yeah.
I guess that's a good question.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate part with the labeling requirements. For example, FDA is the Federal Food and Drug Administration of US. That's they are in charge of labeling. So the retailers or the processors, they need to include a date. So that's one of the reason, like they have a date. That doesn't mean food will go bad the same day. So again, it's a lot of factors that influence to like how the food is produced. We have a lot of control. How in the retail chain, even in the warehouse, how is the storage condition. So all can play a role, but end of the day, the consumers, uh, if they're sure, like if they cook to appropriate recommended temperature or if they cool it immediately, I think food is most of the time it's safe to eat because most of the food processors, they use some high standards to produce the food. So that's why they are still in the business. If they're not doing a great job, they cannot, because we talk with a lot of big processors, they have very high standards. That's why they are here for 50 years, 60 years,
Yeah.
because they are more concerned about their company than the quality. So that's why food safety in general is good, but again, don't quote me on all stuff. Some processors may not follow. So that's why consumers use the judgment. If they're buying from a good store where they have a good track record, if even if it's 1 or 2 days off, you are good as long as you cook to the proper temperature. I don't see any major issue. But again, there are a lot of different stores, so you need to be
Yeah.
very judgmental about where to buy, when did you buy, and from where you bought it.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Ram, for your time. I think this is a topic that it's good to start this year with all this data, because I think we're gonna see a lot and more research on this, and I guess there's the one of the main components there is mentioning labeling, right?
Yeah,
There's a it's an a, there's some work that we have to do on that. Hopefully we'll see you in RMC this year in person. Looking forward to that. um I don't know, this is excited in a good way, right? Because
sure, sure, yeah, yeah,
so the data is there, and I think it's a very good, well, I don't want to say groundwork, but based on what we had back
mm-hmm.
in 2000, now we have this data that we can use as a reference moving forward,
Sure,
and maybe come back in 15 years and look at this again and see, like,
Exactly.
did we improve, or are we getting worse?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure to join your MeatsPad. You ask some really good question, and also you select some very relevant topics. Thank you very much, and hope to see you again. Okay.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
one.